Hey guys, welcome to Hook with Anime. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. A cold night and an even colder day. Kai checked her youngest son's temperature with a worried frown. Rokuta had developed a bad fever earlier that evening, and despite her and her children trying everything to try and break it, it just seemed to keep getting worse. Nezuko brought in another fresh bowl of water and some cloths. "Here, Mom, I brought you some more water and clean cloths," the 12-year-old said. The woman smiled gratefully up at her oldest daughter. "Thank you, Nezuko, I appreciate it," she replied. The second eldest of the Kamado children leaned over to look at her baby brother. "How is he?" she asked worriedly. "It's getting worse. I'm afraid that if we don't go into town and get some medicine for him, he won't last the night," Kai replied, tearing up slightly. She couldn't bear to lose any of her precious children, she just couldn't. Nezuko looked scared, "But the storm looks like it's going to get worse. If you get caught in it, we'll lose you and big brother too," the young girl replied. Kai gently wiped away the beginnings of tears that formed in her daughter's eyes. "It's all right. I have that breathing technique that your father taught me. It'll help me keep up my body heat, even in this weather if I can use it right. Please, Nezuko. Stay here and take care of your younger siblings, okay? We'll be back, I promise," the woman swore, determined. Kai Kamado may be a kind-hearted housewife, but she had more determination than anyone Nezuko had ever met. After all, her older brother had to get that near iron wool of his from somewhere, right? The young girl sighed and nodded. "All right, I'll do my best to take care of everyone here, Mom," she replied, her eyes lighting up with determination as well. Her mother smiled encouragingly. "That's a good girl." Tanjiro, who had been watching everything silently, but with a steely look in his eyes, perked up when his mother turned to look at him. "Go get something warm on, Tanjiro. The last thing I need is you getting sick as well out there, son," she ordered. The 13-year-old nodded in determination. "Right," he said, rushing off to do as his mother asked. P.F. Kai and her son rushed down the mountain as fast as they could. "I have to get this medicine for Rokuta. Please, just let the weather hold out until we get home. The storm can rage as much as it wants then, but please, let us get back up the mountain before that happens." The Kamado woman thought desperately. By the time they'd made it down the mountain it was nighttime. The two Kamados hurried to the doctor's, pounding on the door. "Excuse me. Please, it's an emergency," Kai cried. Tanjiro kept glancing up at the mountain with worry turning to desperation. His mother knew how much he loved them, and how deeply he had ingrained the fact that caring for his younger siblings was his responsibility. She knew that if anything happened to Rokuta, he would blame himself. Then the door finally opened. An older man, wrapped up in many layers of clothes, peeked his head out of the door. "Oh. Kamado-kun, what are you doing here?" he asked in confusion. The man was the town doctor, and relatively new. However, he already knew Tanjiro because the teen had delivered some charcoal to him a few days ago. "What are you doing out here in this weather, young man?" the doctor asked sternly, his instincts from his job showing. "Are you Dr. Kusari?" Kai demanded, reaching out and gripping the man's hands tightly. The doctor turned to the adult woman that was with the young charcoal seller. "Please, you have to help us. It's my youngest son, my baby. He needs medicine, please. We don't have much money, but we'll make double the charcoal to give you for a week if you would just let us have some medicine, sir," the woman begged, desperate to save her baby boy. The doctor frowned, then nodded and stepped aside. "All right. As a doctor, it's my job to help all those in need, so I'll give you whatever medicine you need free of charge tonight," Dr. Kusari replied, making both Kai and her son smile in relief. P.F. After getting the medicine for Rokuta, Kai and Tanjiro raced back up the mountain as fast as they could, but the increasingly strong snow that blew from the sky slowed them down considerably. Tanjiro was slightly better off, due to his job of traveling up and down the mountain every day to sell charcoal, but his mother was falling behind. "Mom," the 13-year-old cried, bracing himself against his mother's side to try and help her against the wind. But it was still too strong. "At this rate, we'll both freeze to death," Kai cried, numbing fingers unable to grasp the jar of medicine any longer as it slipped from her fingers and fell into the snow. "Oh no," she cried, bending down to pick it up with trembling hands. We have to find somewhere to stop for the night, at least until this particular cold front slows down. Tanjiro cried, trying to sniff out anywhere that they could safely stop. Hey, over here, a faint male voice called out. Tanjiro squinted against the snow and lit up with relief. Mom. It's Grandpa Saburo. We're right by his house. He cried. He braced himself against his mother and helped her walk towards the house that was built on a lower part of the path, so it was more out of the way of the storm. P.F. Kai shivered, blowing clouds of warm air out of her mouth as her son helped her sit down in front of Saburo's fire pit. Oh, that feels so much better. She sighed, rubbing her hands together after she'd put down Rokuda's medicine. Thank you so much, sir, she said with a smile, turning to him, and beside her, her son started to pull his warm clothes off so that he could defrost in front of the fire. And she meant it when she said defrost. Tanjiro's hair and face were white with frost, as were his winter clothes. After stripping out of most of them, the teen sat before the fire, rubbing his hands together to dry and warm them up, even as they shivered. Kai sighed. She really hoped this storm wouldn't last too long. Suddenly her stomach growled with hunger, making the woman blush in embarrassment. Saburo dished up some of the stew he'd been cooking. Here boy, give this to your mother will you, he ordered. Oh no, you don't have to, Kai replied, shaking her head in decline. But the old man simply looked at her. You need hot food in you to warm up, girl. Now don't waste it, Saburo said sternly. The black-haired woman looked down before nodding. All right, thank you, she said, taking the food from Tanjiro with a sigh, while the older man dished up some food for her son as well. Time skip. After the two kamados had finished eating their meal, Kai glanced out the window to see the storm continuing to rage. I hope everyone will be all right at home, especially Rokuda. Hold on baby, mommy's coming, she said softly. It might have been a good thing you two were held up by this storm, Saburo muttered as he began to get a spare futon ready, and to try and fix it up in a way that would let both mother and son sleep in it. What do you mean? Tanjiro, ever the perceptive one, asked. Nighttime is when the demons come out. They eat whatever humans they can find, even people in the towns aren't safe. So you two, being out there at this time of night and being unable to tell what's around you 'cause of the storm would be prime meals for those things, Saburo explained as he fixed up the bedding. Kai nodded politely, but mostly ignored the man's words as senile ravings. But Tanjiro couldn't help but think about what the man had said. Didn't Grandma used to say the same kind of thing? About demons, he wondered with a frown. All right, lights out, you two can head on up the mountain when morning comes. The blizzard should be over by then, so get some rest, Saburo said. As the mother and son went to bed, both dismissing the old man's words in their minds, neither knew that soon, their whole lives would change. P.F. Thankfully the next day the snowstorm had ended. Kai and her son bowed to the old man. Thank you very much for your hospitality, sir. We'll have to thank you properly some day soon, she said gratefully. Just take care of Rokuda-chan. That's all the thanks I need, Saburo replied, waving the pair off. Then the two of them headed back up the mountain. Since they were close, neither were hurrying as fast as last night. I hope everyone is all right. Don't worry Rokuda, we're almost there, the adult thought, before noticing that Tanjiro had stopped dead in his tracks. Kai turned to look at her son. Tanjiro, what's, she began, but paused upon noticing his expression. He looked pale. Son. What's wrong? She asked seriously. I smell blood. Lots of it, he began, fists clenching. It's coming from the house, he cried, before taking off running. Tanjiro, wait, his mother called, but she was even more worried than her son. Why would there be lots of blood? Is everyone all right? Please God, let my children be all right, she begged. Upon reaching their house, Kai needed a moment to process the sight before her as her son screamed. When she had the jar fell from numb fingers. This can't be real, she muttered. There, laying in the snow and covered in blood was Nezuko, her arms wrapped tight around Rokuda. Nezuko's back had been slashed open. The woman almost vomited, but Tanjiro was screaming, and every part of her maternal instinct was screaming at her to comfort him. even in the face of her own devastation. Kai stumbled towards her son, but Tanjiro, being the good older brother that he was, had rushed forwards to check on his younger sister and brother. Kai wanted to go to him, but her legs gave out as all her strength had gone into moving to Tanjiro's side. She was dimly aware, in the corner of her vision, of her son moving towards the open door of their house. When she finally managed to look up, Tanjiro was kneeling on the ground in the doorway, gripping onto it like it was the only thing keeping him from breaking altogether. Then he let out a scream of pure agony, kneeling in the snow and beating the wooden floorboards, the snow, anything he could reach with his hands. Somehow, Kai managed to stand up and make her body move towards her oldest daughter and youngest son. With trembling hands, she checked Nezuko's temperature and pulse. Nezuko was still warm, but her heart stuttered when she couldn't find a heartbeat initially. However, after a couple of seconds a week, barely their pulse registered against her fingers. Gasping in relief, the mother turned to look up at her oldest son, who still knelt by the door, tears streaming from his eyes. She cringed. She felt the same, her heart breaking more every second, but she knew that Nezuko needed them now. Tanjiro. Kai snapped, catching her son's attention, grab something warm for Nezuko, we have to get back down the mountain now. She cried in determination. Taking a breath, Tanjiro nodded and rushed into the building to get Nezuko's thick brown haori. Kai grit her teeth and stared down at her daughter. Nezuko, please. Just hang on a little longer. She thought desperately. P.F. Kai and Tanjiro ran as fast as they could down the mountain, the adult carrying her daughter on her back. The situation was even more dire than it had been the day before. Nezuko's life was hanging on by a thread. How could something like this have happened? Exclamation mark. We were barely gone for the night. Kai thought, trying hard not to slip or trip in the deep snow. Now's not the time to think about that. Just get Nezuko to town. Come on Kai, you have to move faster. She began to slow down as her breathing got shallower. No. Control your breathing. Come on. If Tanjiro could dance all night with his poor health, you can get down this mountain faster. Or what was the point of him teaching you the Hinokami Kagura? Kai thought, the snow and cold wind stinging her eyes, and she fought to get her breathing under control. Tanjiro tried to keep up with his mother as she sped up, in order to help lighten Nezuko's weight, but she was moving too fast in the snow. How is she doing that? He wondered. Suddenly he noticed Nezuko begin to move. She was waking up. Mom, Nezuko is. Tanjiro called. Kai noticed her daughter's movement too late, and Nezuko ended up knocking the two of them off the cliff. Mom, Nezuko. Tanjiro screamed as they fell. Immediately the burgundy-haired teen hurried to climb down the cliffside to get to his family. Kai gasped as she sat up. Tanjiro. Nezuko. She called, afraid that her daughter had been hurt more during the fall. Kai saw Nezuko just as her son reached her. Mom. Are you okay? Where's Nezuko? He demanded. Tanjiro sniffed the air to find his younger sister, but frowned. Why is Nezuko's scent different? He thought, looking to where he'd smelled her. Nezuko stood by a tree, swaying slightly in the wind as the haori wrapped around her shoulders fell off. Tanjiro shivered. I want to go help her, make sure she's okay, but there's something wrong with Nezuko's scent, he thought. Unfortunately, his mother didn't have the same sense of smell that her son did. Nezuko, are you alright? Are you hurt? She cried fearfully as she ran up to her daughter. It's okay, I'm here now. Tanjiro too. We're going to get you some help, okay? She asked, reaching out to touch the girl. That's when Nezuko opened her eyes and growled. Kai gasped, catching sight of the large fangs, bulging veins and light pink slitted eyes just before Nezuko growled and lunged at her. Mom, Nezuko. Tanjiro cried as his mother reacted on instinct and grabbed a nearby stick on the ground, shoving it into her daughter's mouth before she could bite her. Nezuko's sudden lunge forced Kai back onto the ground, and she winced from the force of the impact. The woman opened her eyes in shock as her oldest daughter gripped her shoulder tight with clawed hands, and her large fangs were now clearly visible around the stick. What is this? Nezuko. Nezuko, what happened to you? Exclamation mark quote. Kai cried in fear and worry for her child. Nezuko growled as she pushed down harder on the stick and suddenly increased in size. What the N, Nezuko? Tanjiro yelped in shock, as his baby sister was now as big as their mother. He tried to move towards them, he needed to help. No, Tanjiro, stop. Something is wrong with your sister. Grunt, she might be sick or something. Stay back, Kai cried as she struggled with Nezuko's strength. Tanjiro suddenly remembered what Saburo had said the night before. Man-eating demons. Nezuko, no, it couldn't be, right? My little sister is a human, she has been since she was born. He thought, remembering holding the baby Nezuko with his mother's help, but this scent, she doesn't smell like Nezuko anymore. Tanjiro began to tremble as he watched his sister struggle to eat their mother. It wasn't her, I'm sure of that. If Nezuko had attacked and eaten the others, why would she have been unconscious too? Exclamation mark. Besides, there were no signs that she'd attacked them, like blood on her mouth or hands. It can't have been her, but tears started to gather in his eyes, and he felt his body move instinctively. He wrapped his arms around his younger sister's upper arms and tried to pull her away from their mother. Stop it, Nezuko. It's us, Tanjiro and Mom. We're here now. I'm sure you were scared and hurt, but it's okay. You don't have to be scared anymore. Just come back to us, Nezuko. Please, just remember. Tanjiro begged, muscles straining as he tried to pull Nezuko away. Tanjiro, look, his mother called. The 13-year-old risked a peek and saw his little sister crying. Nezuko, he said in surprise, but also relief. She remembered them. Suddenly another smell caught his attention, flowers. But it's winter. His thoughts ground to halt, as his instinct screamed at him, move now. The young teenager threw himself at his mother and sister, landing on top of them and feeling something slice the tips of the hair. Wah, what? He gasped out, as he and his mother looked up to see a woman wearing a butterfly-like haori and with long hair. She had 2 butterfly hair clips on either side of her head, pinning her hair back, while her black hair fell straight down her back. She held a katana in her hand which had a pink blade. A sword, Kai mumbled. Who are you? Tanjiro asked, voice trembling slightly in shock. The woman turned around, and frowned when she saw Kei holding Nezuko in her arms. My name is Kanae Kocho. Did you know that that child is a demon? The now named Kanae asked. What? No, she's my daughter, not a demon. We were taking her to the doctors in town. Kai replied. The swordswoman closed her eyes. Oh, I'm so sorry for you, she said sadly. Tanjiro moved in front of his family. Nezuko's hurt, we were going to get help for her. He explained. Kanae opened her eyes, which had a sad look in them. I'm afraid that a doctor couldn't do anything. Not now. She remembered a woman with a fierce expression, purple eyes and short black hair with a purple tint to its tips, not even the best doctor in the world. She said softly. Tanjiro's eyes widened slightly, her scent. There's so much sadness and regret. He realized. Suddenly a gust of wind blew past the 2 human kamados, who flinched from the stinging cold snow. When they blinked their eyes open again, Nezuko wasn't being held by their mother anymore. Nezuko, Kai yelped, looking around as her daughter's growls could be heard nearby. Both Tanjiro and his mother spotted the girl at the same time. She was being held by the swordswoman, Kocho-san. Nezuko. The 2 cried at the same time. Please don't move, I don't want to have to hurt you both, Kanae asked, holding her sword close to Nezuko's neck. No, please, I swear, my daughter hasn't eaten anyone. Even if she has become a demon somehow. Back home, she was laying on top of my youngest son, but she had no blood on her face except for her head wound. She didn't attack them either because there wasn't any blood on her hands. Please, Nezuko would never attack or eat a human. Not my daughter. Kai cried. Tanjiro nodded. That's right. And the scent at our house, there was a whole new one that I'd never smelled before. I'm sure whoever's scent that was, is who did it, so please. He agreed, as Kanae placed her sword against Nezuko's throat. No, don't kill my baby girl. Please, not my Nezuko, Kai begged, beginning to cry. She fell to her knees. Please, don't take any more of my family away. I've already lost my husband and the rest of my children. Please don't kill her. I'll do anything you want. Just please don't kill Nezuko. She pleaded, kneeling in the snow, Tanjiro doing the same. The woman watched them, before lowering her sword, but keeping up her grip on the newborn demon. How can I be sure that your daughter won't attack you once I'm gone? Or any other humans? She asked. Kai looked up in surprise. I am a demon slayer. It's unfortunately my job to kill demons to ensure that they don't eat any humans. What guarantee is there that this demon won't attack anyone and eat them, other than you say she won't? Kanae asked. The woman thought about that. There was really no way to promise something like, Nezuko would never eat humans. Tanjiro's voice suddenly cut through her thoughts and she looked up in surprise. I'm sure she knows who we are. And my mom and I won't let her hurt anyone. I swear as the oldest son of Tanjiro and Kei, that I will find a way to cure her, and make Nezuko human again. He shouted. The demon slayer's eyes widened in shock. Cure her? Do you really think there's a way? She asked, voice trembling. Kai steeled her nerve and spoke up then. Has anyone ever looked for a cure? I've heard that anything can be achieved if a person is willing to try, she said, determination like a fire in her eyes. The swordswoman said nothing for a moment, practically still as a statue. That seemed to be all Nezuko needed, for she sent a strong kick to the older woman's stomach, knocking her back a few feet and lunged at her family members. Oh no, I was too caught up in my fantasies, I wasn't paying enough attention. Kanae thought, moving to grab hold of the demon girl again, but gasped as she slid to a stop, spinning around and standing in a guarding position in front of her mother and older brother. Tanjiro and Kai watched in surprise as Nezuko stood before them protectively, growling at the demon slayer in front of them. She didn't attack them, or even try to eat them. Could this girl really be? Kanae thought, before Nezuko ran towards her, fangs bared in a snarl. She's going after me. Because I have a sword. Does she really know that those two are her family? And is trying to protect them from a threat? The flower breath user dodged each blow. I have a feeling that this demon is different from others. She knocked Nezuko back. If that's true, could that old dream finally have the chance to come true? The woman wondered. Nezuko. Tanjiro called. The newborn demon glanced back at her older brother, giving the Hashira time to hit her in the neck, knocking Nezuko unconscious. No, Nezuko, Kai cried, before stopping, as she watched the other woman sheath her blade. After she reached into her pocket and pulled out something. It was made of green bamboo. When she began walking towards Nezuko, both Tanjiro and his mother moved to protect her. Kanae smiled. There's no need for that. I no longer have any intention of hurting Nezuko, she said. The two human kamados slowly relaxed. I have something for her, the woman said calmly, pulling out a piece of bamboo with a red cord attached to the ends. Bamboo? Kai asked, confused. It's a muzzle, to keep her from biting anyone. After she'd tied the muzzle around the back of Nezuko's head, blocking her mouth, Kanae turned back to her mother and brother. Could you come with me? I want to train you two to be demon slayers, so that you can protect yourself. And if you were with me, it would be easier to protect Nezuko as well, she asked. Kai nodded, anything to protect her children. But Tanjiro turned back the way they'd come. Could you wait for a while? We should bury our family first. His mother nodded in agreement. Yes, we should. The older woman nodded. Of course, she said, following the three kamados back to their house. To be continued. 11 Chapter 2. Traveling with the Flower Hashira. After they'd finished burying the rest of their family, Kei and Tanjiro knelt in prayer before their graves. Nezuko, meanwhile, stayed in the house since the clouds were clearing up a bit. Kanae stared down at the graves in sorrow. I'm sorry that I couldn't get here in time to save your family, she said sadly, looking at the 4 small graves where the children of the Kamado family were buried. It wasn't your fault, Kanae-san. Whoever killed them is who I would like a word with, Kei replied, eyes hardening as she thought of the faceless monster who could kill 4 small children in cold blood. Kanae glanced silently at the window of the Kamado household, where Nezuko was peeking out at them. In reality, any demon could have killed your family. But given that the bodies were left here and not eaten, and the fact that your daughter was turned into a demon, there is only one being that is known that could have done it, the Kocho began, clenching her fists as she thought of him. That man was a monster indeed. Both Kei and her son turned to look up at her with steely expressions. Who was it? Tanjiro asked. The king and creator of all Damonkan. Muzan Kibutsuji, Kanae replied solemnly. Tanjiro glared at the ground, committing the name to memory. So this Kibutsuji demon is the one who killed my siblings and turned Nezuko into a demon. I swear, I'm going to kill him so that they can all rest in peace. And he turned his attention to the window where the top of his little sister's head could be seen poking over the sill. I swear I'll find a way to turn you back into a human, Nezuko, he thought. The flower Hashira sighed. All right, we should get going, she began. The two kamados stood to their feet. Also, demons die when exposed to sunlight, so you might want to find something to carry Nezuko-chan in, Kanae explained. How about the basket that I use for carrying charcoal in? Would that work? Tanjiro asked. But his mother frowned. Dear, I'm not sure that would be big enough to carry your sister in, she replied, a hand to her face in thought. But then Tanjiro lit up. I've got it. He turned to his mother. Mom, remember how Nezuko grew to be as big as you earlier when she first turned into a demon? He asked. Kei remembered. It was when her daughter had been attacking her, she'd gotten so much bigger suddenly. Yes, I remember, dear, the woman nodded. Well, I just had a thought, what if she can get smaller too? The 13-year-old exclaimed with a smile. The adult thought about that. Yes, Nezuko had gotten bigger, so it would make sense that she could shrink as well. Kei turned to her son. All right, let's try it out, she said with a smile. P.F. Mother and son stood in front of Nezuko, who was laying on the floor of their house. They tried not to look at the blood stains on the floor just a few meters away. Tanjiro held up his basket. Hey Nezuko, do you remember how you got really big earlier today? Do you think you could get smaller to fit in here? In the basket? He asked, pointing at it. The demon girl blinked at them, rolling around on the floor. Kei smiled. I haven't seen Nezuko act this way in years, not since she was a toddler, she thought. Come on dear, try to get in here, okay. You can do it Nezuko-chan, their mother prompted. Nezuko rolled over onto her stomach and crawled into the basket, shrinking as she did. Finally, she lay down on the side of it, as small as Rokuta, her kimono and Haori pulled around her. Tanjiro lifted the basket up, smiling down at his baby sister. That's a good girl Nezuko. You really did it, I'm so proud of you, he said with a bright smile, rubbing Nezuko's head, which earned him a pleased hum, as his sister enjoyed the head rub. Kei smiled, glad that they now had a way to carry her daughter safely during the day. She looked into the basket, seeing the small form of Nezuko look up at her. The young demon reached up for her, mumbling through her gag. The woman cradled her daughter's cheek lovingly, which Nezuko leaned into and cuddled her hand. Don't worry baby, you can come out when the sun goes down, okay? She asked. After removing her hand, the two human kamados worked together to wrap and tie a sheet around the basket to protect Nezuko from the sun. I'll carry her mom, I'm more used to this kind of thing anyway, Tanjiro offered, shouldering the basket with practiced ease. Kei nodded and they turned to face Kanae again. Sorry for ignoring you, she said apologetically. Oh, it's fine, it gave me some time to write a letter to the Demon Slayer Corps Master, the other woman replied, sending a crow off. The flower-breathing user turned to them. Now, shall we go? She asked with a smile. P.F. The group traveled all day, and into the night. As Kei noticed the sun almost gone behind the horizon, she turned to the other woman. Kanae-san, can we let Nezuko out now? Since it's getting dark, she asked. The flower Hashira thought for a moment. All right, just make sure she doesn't wander off please, Kanae asked. Nezuko was let out of her basket, and she walked beside Tanjiro, holding his hand. Just as they reached a set of stairs leading to a temple he stopped. Kei turned to look at him. Son. What is it? She asked, the swordswoman also turning to look at him. I smell blood, lots of it, Tanjiro muttered. Kanae instantly narrowed her eyes, and reached for her sword, but before she could do anything, Tanjiro was already running up the stairs, pulling Nezuko along with him, while their mother followed. Hold on, don't just run off, the Demon Slayer called, before quickly following the family. Hey, are you alright? Tanjiro called as they reached the top of the stairs. However, his calls were choked off when he saw the sight before them. A demon was bent over the corpses of the people from the temple and was eating them. Well, are you two humans? I was just thinking that this wouldn't be nearly enough to satisfy my hunger. Before Kei could make it to the top of the stairs, and just before Kanae could, the demon leapt at Tanjiro with his hand around his throat and knocked them both all the way back down the stairs. Tanjiro, Kei cried, terrified for her son. In fact, she was so worried that she began instinctively using the fire-breathing style that her husband taught her. The flower Hashira turned to rush back down the stairs, but before she could make it more than 3 steps, a black blur rushed past her as Nezuko, alerted to her brother's situation, run down the stairs. Mother and daughter reached the demon at the same time and Nezuko kicked it in the ribs when it tried to move its head out of the way. A cracking sound was heard, and the demon coughed, "That's strength. There's no way the girl is a human," he thought. Before he could retaliate though, Kei reached him, grabbed him by the clothes and reeled back, "Stay away from my children," she roared, before delivering a headbutt with all her strength. A cracking sound was heard, much louder than when the demon's ribs were broken. "What the hell? Did this human woman just crack my skull?" Single quote. The demon thought, brain practically rattling around in his head from the blow. Before he had time to heal, Tanjiro also headbutted him, causing the demon's skin to crack and blood to spray out, and his nose to start bleeding. What the fuck is wrong with these humans? How can a human do this to a demon? He thought. A blur then sped past, slowing down to reveal Kanae with her sword drawn. What was that? The demon wondered as his head fell from his shoulders and rolled on the ground. It and his body then began fading away into ashes. Tanjiro stood up with a sigh, moving over to the disintegrating body. "Kanae-san, this demon used to be a human like Nezuko, right?" he asked. The Hashira sheathed her sword. "Yes," she replied softly, sadly. The teen nodded and placed his hands together in prayer. "Then I'll pray that he'll be happy in the afterlife as a human again," he said, closing his eyes as the last of the demon faded away. Kanae stared in surprise at Tanjiro. To think, there was another person out there who felt the same way that she did about the demons. It made her think about what the boy had said to her when she'd met them. "I swear as the oldest son of Tanjiro and Kei, that I will find a way to cure her, and make Nezuko human again." Could there really be a way to cure demons? To make it so that they wouldn't have to kill these tragic creatures? Watching the 3 kamados, Kanae really hoped so. P.F. After burying the bodies of the demon's victims, and paying their respects, the Hashira tried to check the 2 human kamados' heads. "Are you sure that you're both alright?" she asked worriedly. "Yes, don't worry, both my mom and I have really tough heads. It would take a lot more than that to damage them," Tanjiro said proudly. Kai nodded in agreement, though there was a hint of amusement in her expression. "Don't worry about my mom either. She once killed a wild boar by headbutting it," Tanjiro explained. Kanae gasped. "Did you really, Kei-san?" she asked in amazement. The other woman smiled. "Of course. I felt bad about killing it, but it was chasing my son, Takeo, so I had to," she explained. The flower Hashira giggled. "You know, I think this woman would make a good Suguko," she thought. After picking up their things, the 4 of them continued on their way. Time skip. "So where are we going, Kanae-san?" Tanjiro asked as they walked. "We're going to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. I have a house there called the Butterfly Estate. It's where I live as a Hashira, and also take care of children I've adopted as well as train my Suguko," Kanae explained. "If you don't mind me asking, what's a Suguko, ma'am?" Kai asked. The other woman smiled. "Not at all. A Suguko is the personal student of a Hashira, like myself. I only have one right now, but I wouldn't mind taking on another," she explained. Tanjiro looked down in thought. "I wonder if I could become a demon slayer. Then I could protect Nezuko and mom too," he wondered. Meanwhile Kai was thinking the same thing. If I can become her student, then I could protect Tanjiro and Nezuko. The 2 kept their thoughts to themselves for the moment and walked in silence. "So, how long will it take us to get to your house, Kanae-san?" Tanjiro asked. "About a week, allowing for breaks, the Hashira replied cheerfully. A whole week. Wow, you must live very far away from where we did then, he said. Yes, it's quite far. I hope you don't mind. Kanae asked. Kai shook her head. No, that's fine. As long as Nezuko is all right, we'll be fine, she replied. The other woman smiled. I promise I'll protect Nezuko. I've already written a letter to the master about everything, so hopefully when we get there, no one will try to kill Nezuko. Although, many Hashira hate all demons, so I make no promises, the flower breath user explained. The two kamados shared worried looks, while Tanjiro adjusted Nezuko's basket on her back. By the way, for two civilians, you two handled yourselves well against that demon back there, Kanae said cheerfully, clapping her hands. Oh, thank you, I just acted on instinct when he attacked my son. I'm sorry if I caused you any trouble, Kei replied apologetically. Kanae giggled, no, not at all. I was actually impressed. Most people's first reaction to being attacked by a demon is to run away screaming. But you two fought it head-on literally, she said, giggling more. Tanjiro chuckled when he understood the pun and his mother smiled. Nezuko watched the three humans with blank confusion in her eyes. Suddenly Tanjiro's stomach growled and he flushed red with embarrassment. Oh, sorry. I haven't had a chance to eat much today, he muttered, looking down. Neither have I, not with everything that happened, Kei replied. I have some spare rice balls if you want them, the Hashira said, pulling them out of her kimono. Are you sure? We don't want to take your food, the mother replied with a frown. Please, I've already eaten, and besides, you two might end up being my students soon. I can't just let you starve, Kanae replied. Well, thank you then. Please allow me to cook you something when we get to your house as thanks, Kei offered. If you want to, then I don't mind. We'll take a day of rest when we get to my home before I train you, you can cook then, the other woman suggested. Kei smiled gratefully. Thank you very much, she said. P.F. After resting again, the group finally made it to a town just as the sun rose. Nezuko curled up inside her basket again. The three humans went to get settled at a hotel for the day. Both Tanjiro and Kei were amazed at the hotel, considering the fact that they'd never been inside one before. Tanjiro noticed that Kanae was hiding her sword. She bought their rooms. Yes, I would like 2 rooms for 2 days please, she asked the woman at the front desk. Tanjiro watched her curiously. Upon getting their room keys, Kanae led them to 2 rooms that were next to each other. Your mother and I will take this one, Tanjiro-kun, you and your sister can have the other. Don't forget to close the curtains before you let your sister out of her basket, she said, causing Tanjiro to nod in understanding. Hold on, let me tuck you in. You are the only ones I can do that for now, Kei said. Tanjiro nodded. Thank you, Mom, he replied gratefully. After closing the curtains in the room, Tanjiro removed the cover on Nezuko's basket. The young demon crawled out, before moving straight for the bed. Her mother smiled gently, before removing Nezuko's shoes and haori. Here you go, Nezuko, a nice soft bed to sleep in, she said, pulling the blanket up over her daughter once she was settled. Almost immediately Nezuko closed her eyes and was fast asleep. After fixing up Nezuko's blankets, Kai moved over to her son. Tanjiro lay down in the bed, and smiled as his mother adjusted his blankets as well. Are you warm enough, dear? She asked softly, so as not to wake her daughter. Yes, Mom, I'm fine. You know, I'm really glad you're here with me. Nezuko too. I don't know what I'd do if I was the only one from our family to survive. His gaze turned sad. I would probably become consumed with hatred and revenge. I mean, yes, I hate whoever did this to my family, of course I do. But, he looked over at Nezuko, sleeping soundly in the bed, and then at his mother, who tenderly brushed some of his hair away from his face. Even so, I feel like I can still just be me. As long as I have some of my family here, I can just be myself, he thought as he slowly fell asleep. Have a good sleep you too, Kai whispered, before standing up to leave the room. Before she did though, she looked back at her precious children one last time. Then she left their room for the one she was sharing with Kanae-san, quietly closing the door. P.F. The other woman looked up as Kai entered the room. Are they asleep then? She asked. Yes, both of them are sleeping peacefully in the other room, Kai replied, pulling the wrap off of her hair and shaking it out. The woman's long black hair fell down her back as they ran her fingers through it before tying it up into a ponytail. Tomorrow we'll be continuing our journey after eating breakfast, so get as much rest as you can, Kanae said. Kai nodded. I'll try to anyway, she replied. Yawning, she lay down in bed as the Kocho turned out the light. Have a good sleep, she said softly, as her eyes slipped closed. Thankfully, she was too exhausted to have nightmares that day. P.F. Later that night, Kai and Tanjiro went with Kanae to have dinner. The mother had tried to wake Nezuko up, but she was fast asleep. Kai was worried, but the Hashira had checked the demon girl over and assured both human kamados that Nezuko was fine. If I had to guess, I'd say that she's sleeping to recover her strength and heal her injuries since she's not eating humans, Kanae said. What makes you think that, ma'am? Tanjiro asked in surprise. Well, most demons don't sleep at all, plus they would eat humans to regain their strength and help them heal. Nezuko isn't doing that, so sleeping is the only other option, the flower breath user explained. Kai thought about it. She supposed it made sense. Alright, let's go get some dinner, the Hashira said. I promise we'll pay you back for all the money you're spending on us, the kamado woman said with a bow. Oh, no please, don't even worry about it, Kanae replied, shaking her head. The fact that I can protect the one demon I've ever met that doesn't eat humans is thanks enough, she said. But we have to pay you back for your kindness, otherwise we would just be seen as selfish. Tanjiro exclaimed. Kanae thought back to the other person she knew who was just as selfless as these two, Kanao. She smiled. Thank you for the offer, but it's alright to be a little selfish sometimes. Don't run yourselves dry just for me, please. Tanjiro frowned, and looked down. Living the way we did, we learned to be thankful for everything we had. And to everyone who helped us along the way. Being selfish was just asking for trouble. If we helped and were kind to others, then they would do the same for us. Even if they didn't, we would at least know that we'd done the right thing, he said. The other woman smiled gently. If only more humans were like you too, she said. Right, let's go get breakfast, Kanae decided. Tanjiro nodded and turned to his sister. We'll be back soon, Nezuko, he said, stroking her head. His mother sighed as they left the room and locked the door. Alright, what would you two like for dinner then? The Hashira asked. If I had to choose, how about some udon? Tanjiro asked. Kai nodded. That sounds good, she agreed. Alright then, let's go, Kanae said. As the three left the building, Tanjiro looked around. I've never seen a town at night time before, he said curiously. Yes, it's surprisingly bright, his mother agreed, surprised. Just stay with me. Sometimes demons attack humans in towns like this. But if you're with me, then I can protect you, Kanae ordered. Tanjiro nodded. Yes ma'am, he agreed easily. They stopped at an udon cart. Can I have a bowl of udon with grated yam on top please? The teen asked. I would like some udon with cabbage if that's alright, Kei asked. After getting their orders, the two sat down on a bench nearby to eat. This is good, Tanjiro thought, looking around. I've never been to another town other than the one at the foot of our mountain. I wonder what Kanae-san's house is like, he thought to himself. After eating, the group returned to their hotel. They found Nezuko still asleep in her bed. Tanjiro frowned, slightly worried. She's fine. Kanae-san said so. There's no reason to worry, he thought. Soon everyone went back to bed, knowing that the next day they would continue traveling. P.F. The next few days followed the same pattern. Nezuko would be let out of her box to walk once night fell as long as there were no humans nearby. Along the way, the flower Hashira killed several demons that came after them or that they ran into. Nezuko helped sometimes as well, usually with superhumanly powerful kicks. And no matter what happened, Nezuko didn't attack any of the humans that they ran into. Kanae kept track of each instance to report to the master. Finally, after 2 weeks they reached the butterfly estate. Wow, is this where you live, Kanae-san? Kai asked in shock. Yes, this is the butterfly estate. This is where I live, Kanae replied. Upon entering the building, they were met with 4 young girls. One of them was a girl around Tanjiro's age dressed in a pink kimono and with her hair tied up in a side ponytail that was held up with a butterfly hair pin similar to Kane's. The others were 3 younger girls. All had butterfly hair clips as well, in either blue, pink or green. "Master, you're back," one of the little girls said happily. She had long black hair tied into 2 ponytails with blue butterfly hair pins tying them up. The second girl had short, dark purple hair grown down to her shoulders and 2 pink butterfly clips holding it to the sides. The third little girl had 2 twin braids on either side of her head with green butterfly hair ties keeping them tied up. Kanae smiled gently. "Kanao, Sumi, Naho, Kyo. I'm glad to see you're all doing well," she said. She then moved to introduce the 2 kamados. "This is Kai Kamado and her son Tanjiro. She has a daughter as well, but I will talk to you about her later. They are going to be living here from now on, so please be respectful girls," Kanae asked. "Okay," the 3 younger girls replied cheerfully. Meanwhile, Kanao, who was watching them with a smile, simply nodded. "All right, let me show you to your rooms now," the flower Hashira said. As they left, the 3 waved goodbye. "We'll see you both later, Mrs. Kamado, Mr. Tanjiro," Sumi called. However, Tanjiro couldn't help staring at the older girl. "Kanao, her scent is," he thought, cutting his thoughts off to follow the adults. P.F. Kai helped her son set Nezuko up in her new bed. "Here you go, Nezuko-chan. Kanae-san said that you could use this room," she said, as Tanjiro made sure that the curtains were closed and that no sunlight could get into the room. He turned to see his mother stroking Nezuko's hair. "You can get as much sleep as you need to, okay? And we'll be here waiting for you when you wake up." Tanjiro went to stand next to her as he stared down at his younger sister as well. "Mom, do you think Nezuko will be safe here?" he asked worriedly. "I'm sure of it. Kanae-san promised us that she'd protect her after all. You're the one with the enhanced sense of smell. Did she smell like she was lying, son?" Kai asked. "No, I couldn't smell any deception from her. I just don't know about these other Hashira that she told us about. If they all really hate demons as much as she said they do, what if they find out about Nezuko? I can't lose anyone else," Tanjiro replied, trembling as he fought bravely to hold back her tears. "Oh baby," his mother cooed, reaching out and pulling her son into her arms. At that point he couldn't take it anymore and broke down into quiet sobs. "Shish, it will be okay, I promise you. I will become a demon slayer, and I won't allow anyone, be it a demon or one of these Hashira, to harm you or Nezuko. I swear as your mother. And then I will find a way to turn your sister back into a human again." Kei hugged Tanjiro before gently cupping his cheeks, wiping his tears away. "I will make sure that you and Nezuko get to live a long life as humans. Because that's my job as your mother," she said, kissing his forehead. While she hugged him, Kei closed her eyes. "Tanjiro, dear, please give me strength to protect them," she prayed in her mind. To be continued. 11 Chapter 3. Nezuko's Test. After a few days, Kanae went to see Kai and her family. "Kai-san, how are you doing today?" she asked. "Oh, I'm alright. Nezuko is still asleep, but I helped cook lunch for Tanjiro and your students. I was wondering where you'd gone," the Kamado woman replied. "Sorry about that, I had a mission. Anyway, I wanted to ask you something." The Hashira began. "Oh, yes, what is it?" Kai asked curiously. "I was wondering if you would like to be one of my students, along with Kanao." Kanae asked. The mother blinked. "I didn't even get the chance to ask her myself," she thought. "I understand that you might not want to. What with your normal way of life, you would probably not have any inclination to learn to use a sword," Kanae began, before being cut off by the other woman. "Yes," she cried. "Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but, yes, I would like to train under you. I want to do anything I can to protect my children. If that means becoming a demon slayer, then I'll do it," Kai exclaimed in determination. "Well, I didn't expect quite that level of conviction, but I can defiantly understand where it came from," she smiled gently. "All right, I'll train you to be a demon slayer," the Kocho woman agreed. Kocho-san," Tanjiro spoke up from her side. making the other woman turn to look at her. Yes, Tanjiro-kun. She asked. Could you train me too? He asked. Absolutely not. I've already lost the rest of my children. I won't let you do something so dangerous too. What if you die? What will I do then? Please Tanjiro, just stay here where it's safe and look after Nezuko, alright? Kei begged. Tanjiro sighed, but agreed to do so. He then left the room to watch over his younger sister. Good luck with your training, Mom. He called out as he went. Kai nodded and waved to her son. Then she followed Kanae out of the building. Upon reaching a garden, the woman looked around. Right, the first thing I want to do is find out your current limit on your stamina. Once I know how much you can handle at the moment, then I can begin to work out a training regimen for you, Kanae decided. Okay, I'll do my best, Kai replied with a nod. P.F. The Hashira had the Kamado matriarch do jogging, push-ups and sit-ups. After doing 25 sit-ups along with 30 push-ups and 3 laps, Kai collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Alright, that was good for a test. Now I know your current limits, Kanae said, helping the woman to sit up and handing her a bamboo container of water. Ah Pant, thank you Kanae-san. Pant, I don't normally do that much exercise. Sigh, Kai sighed as she took the water and drunk it. The master wants to see Nezuko-chan tonight, the flower breath user said softly. The other woman choked on the drink of water she'd just taken, coughing, before eventually catching her breath. She'll be okay, won't she? I mean, the other Hashira won't hurt her, right? Kai asked worriedly. Kanae smiled slightly. I promise I will do everything I can to ensure you daughter's safety, she replied. The other woman sighed and stood up. I think I'm going to do some more training. Maybe I'll be able to get my mind off what you just said, Kai decided. The older of the butterfly sisters frowned and stood up. She really hoped that she could convince the others to spare Nezuko. As she left, the Kamado matriarch continued her training. I can't let them kill Nezuko. She and Tanjiro are all I have left. I know that she would never harm humans, much less try to eat them. Please, let them spare her, she thought. P.F. Meanwhile, as Nezuko was asleep, and didn't seem to be about to wake up anytime soon, Tanjiro wasn't sure what to do. He supposed he could go for a walk, that always helped clear his mind. The 13-year-old teen looked down at his sleeping younger sister and took her hand. I'll be back soon, okay Nezuko? He whispered to her. Then he stood up and left the room. When he did, he was met with the 3 younger girls that lived and worked there. Oh, hello, Sumi, Kyo and Naho, right? He asked with a gentle smile. That's right, the 3 girls said at the same time, and you're Kamado-san, right? Sumi replied. Oh, yes, that's right, he bowed. Thank you for letting my family and I stay in your home, he said gratefully. Well, Master Kanae wanted to let you stay here, so we don't mind either, Kyo said cheerfully. Tanjiro nodded. I understand. I was just going to have a walk and look around. I hope you all don't mind, he explained. Oh no, not at all, Naho shook her head. Feel free Mr. Tanjiro, she said. The young teen smiled. Thank you. I'll be going now then, he replied with a bow. Tanjiro then walked through the butterfly mansion, looking around. This place is so big. Miss Kocho must be very wealthy to own a house like this, as he thought. I hope Nezuko will be all right here. I do trust Miss Kocho, and I'm sure she wouldn't hurt my sister. But I don't know about the others. These Hashira that Miss Kocho told us about. If they really hate demons as much as said they do, what happens if they find out about Nezuko? He clenched his fists. I can't, no, I won't let anyone take more family from me. I'll protect Nezuko and Mom no matter what, Tanjiro thought. He finally made it outside and shaded his eyes from the sun. Miss Kocho told us that demons burn up under sunlight. Maybe it's a good thing Nezuko is asleep right now. The teen walked through the garden as he let his mind wander. I know Mom doesn't want me to become a demon slayer because of the danger. But if anything happened to her, I would never forgive myself. Tanjiro clenched his fists, not realizing that he had left Kanae's garden and was now wandering through the gardens of the other Hashiras. A white-haired man with scars all over him looked up in confusion from where he was training with a green-tinted katana. The teen left his front garden before he could say anything. The scarred man considered going after the burgundy-haired kid, but shook his head and returned to his sword forms. Tanjiro frowned. I'm the eldest son. That means that it's my responsibility to protect my family just like father did. But if I don't get stronger, Tanjiro's gaze turned hard as he remembered the bloody corpses of his family and he clenched his fists. I'll lose Mom and Nezuko too. And I'll never be able to make whoever it was who did that to my family pay. He stopped and clenched his eyes shut tight, frustrated with his own weakness, fists trembling as he clenched them harder and harder. Well now, what do we have here? A loud, boisterous voice called from in front of him. Tanjiro was finally snapped out of his thoughts when he smelled a new scent right in front of him, then noticed the shadow that had fallen over him. He looked up, seeing a tall man with shoulder-length blonde and red-colored hair and red eyes standing over him. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to almost walk into you, Tanjiro apologized, stepping back and bowing. Forgive me, sir, he said sincerely. The man smiled. Ha, it's fine. Well, you must have been deep in thought, young man. There's nothing wrong with that. Just don't let your thoughts consume you. You need to remember to live in the moment as well, he replied. Tanjiro stared for a moment, before smiling. Yes sir, I understand, he said gratefully. There was a moment of silence, before the 13-year-old realized that he still hadn't introduced himself. Oh. I'm sorry. My name is Tanjiro Kamado. It's nice to meet you, sir, he said. It's nice to meet you too. My name is Kyojuro Rengoku. Tell me, Kamado, would you have any desire to become a demon slayer? Rengoku asked. He paused. This was what he wanted. But he didn't want to disappoint his mother, not when she was working so hard herself. But Rengoku was waiting for a response. I want to protect my mom and little sister more than anything. Especially since I couldn't be there for my other younger siblings when they needed me. But my mom is working so hard to become a demon slayer to protect us, and I don't know, I guess I don't want to worry her either, Tanjiro explained. Tanjiro looked up. I just want to protect them, no matter what I have to do. If becoming a demon slayer means that I can do that, then yes, I want to become a demon slayer. He replied firmly. Ha. Now that's what I like to hear. You've got a fire burning brightly within you, young Kamado. I've decided. Rengoku seemed to become many times bigger and a wind blew his cloak back. Leave it to me. I will train you, he cried dramatically. Thank you, but where did that wind come from? And how did you get so big? Tanjiro exclaimed. The teenager let out a breath and smiled. But still, now I've got myself a teacher. I hope Mom doesn't get too mad at me, he thought. P.F. That night, Kanae checked on Nezuko, as she was still asleep. It doesn't seem like she's going to wake up. I may have to tell the master to postpone the meeting, she decided. Both Kai and Tanjiro breathed a silent sigh of relief at the news. The Hashira turned to look at the two kamados. I'll be back soon. Dinner is almost ready, so please, help yourselves when it is, Kanae said. Then she left to begin getting ready for her meeting. After she had gone, Kai turned to her son. Would you like to bathe first? She asked. Tanjiro shook his head. Oh no, please, you go have one first. After all, you have been training all day, he replied. His mother smiled. Thank you, dear. I'll run you one after I get dressed, she decided. As the woman was leaving, Tanjiro was thinking about the training that he would begin tomorrow. At least his mother would be busy with her own training and shouldn't even notice that he was gone. I'm sorry for lying to you, Mom, but I have to do this. I hope when you find out you'll forgive me somehow, he thought. Tanjiro sat down in front of Nezuko, who seemed to be sleeping peacefully. I hope you'll wake up soon, Nezuko. Mom and I are really worried about you, he said softly, moving a piece of the young demon's hair out of her face. Then he shook his head. No. I have to believe in her. I have to, he cried. Why are you yelling? A monotone voice that Tanjiro didn't recognize asked. The teen yelped and turned around, instinctively pulling the blanket up over Nezuko's head to hide the fact that she was a demon. A girl was standing in the doorway. She was dressed in a pink kimono top and dark pink hakamas. She had long black hair done up in a side ponytail and purple eyes. She looked to be about his age. She stared at him, blinking, before flipping a coin from her hand. She caught it, before looking at it. Then she turned her attention back to Tanjiro. Is that a demon? She asked, only her voice had no inflection in it. It was more like a statement, worded like a question. Tanjiro sniffed. That's weird. She doesn't smell like anything, he thought with slight confusion. But he was more worried than anything. Yes, she's a demon, but she hasn't hurt or eaten anyone, he began, trying to keep calm. The girl didn't have a sword on her, so he relaxed minutely. This is my little sister. Our mom and myself were invited to live here by Miss Kocho. I promise, Nezuko won't hurt anyone, Tanjiro replied. The girl said nothing, only flipped her coin again. Whatever decision she made, she looked up. My master hasn't ordered me to kill this demon, Nezuko, so I won't, she said calmly. The oldest of the Kamado siblings sat up slightly as the girl stopped in front of him. She flipped her coin again. Heads I tell him my name, tails I don't, she thought. The coin landed on tails. So the girl stayed silent. Smelling the fact that the girl had no intention of attacking his sister, Tanjiro sat up completely. Thank you for not attacking her. I don't know what I'd do if I lost my little sister too, he said gratefully. Kanao just smiled at him. My name is Tanjiro Kamado. What's your name? He asked. Kanao flipped her coin again. This time it landed on heads. My name is Kanao Suyuri, she said. Then fell silent again. Tanjiro looked back at Nezuko and adjusted her blanket again so it was covering her without the possibility of smothering her. Kanao looked down at the sleeping Nezuko. For the first time a thought crossed her mind that wasn't about her coin. I didn't know that demons slept. There was silence in the room for a while, until Kanao flipped her coin again. Tanjiro looked over at her. Before the girl spoke, are you going to be training under Master Kanae like your mother Tanjiro? She asked blankly. Tanjiro looked down at his sister. No, I won't. My mom doesn't want me to train, so I'll just be looking after Nezuko, he replied. Kanao blinked at him. That wasn't the whole truth. But I won't ask again. I don't need to know and Master hasn't asked me to ask him, she thought. Suddenly Tanjiro looked at the door, making the 13-year-old girl look at the door as well. Tanjiro, it's time for your bath. Kai called as she slid open the door. Only to find her son sitting with Kane's Suguko, Kanao. The girl stared emotionlessly at her. Hey mom, I was just talking to Kanao while I waited for you, he said as he stood up. Kai nodded in understanding. I see, and were you enjoying your conversation? She asked, smiling kindly at the young girl who looked to be about Tanjiro's age. So this is Kanao. I haven't had a chance to talk to my sibling student yet, she thought to herself. Tanjiro nodded. Yes, she was just telling me that she wouldn't hurt Nezuko, he replied with a smile. His mother nodded. Is that right? She asked, looking over at the black-haired girl. Kanao nodded. Master hasn't ordered me to, so I won't, she said simply. Kai smiled gratefully. Thank you Kanao-chan. I'm grateful. Also, if it's not too much trouble, could you not talk about Nezuko with anyone but your master? We don't want to take the chance that someone else finds out and, well, kills her, she explained. All right, the girl said. Anyway Tanjiro, you need to go wash up before we eat dinner, Kei told her son. Tanjiro nodded in agreement. All right, he turned to Kaneo. It was nice meeting you. I hope we can talk again soon, he said with a bow of his head. The younger Suguko watched him leave, before turning back to look at the two female kamados. She bowed to Kai slightly in respect, before leaving. She's a little strange. Still, I hope this means that Tanjiro has made a friend. He was always so busy helping me and his siblings, and the town was so far away, he never made any friends with children his own age. Kanao seems like a good girl. I think she would make a good friend for Tanjiro, she thought. Okay mom, I'm going to go have my bath now, Tanjiro said. All right son. Dinner should be ready by the time you've finished, his mother replied as her son left the room. After that, Kei was only left with Nezuko, who continued to sleep. I wonder how long you're going to sleep for, dear, she said out loud, caressing her daughter's cheek and adjusting a bit of her hair. Still, if you need to sleep, then take as long as you need, Nezuko, she said. Kai sighed and let her thoughts wander. Tanjiro, dear, I hope you're taking care of the rest of our children for me, she thought, sending a prayer to her husband. P.F. Nezuko had woken up later that night and she shrunk into her toddler form to make it easier for her mother to carry her. It's not just her size either. Since becoming a demon, Nezuko has seemed to act more like a toddler too. Not that I mind, Kai thought as she walked towards the master of the Demon Slayer Corps with her daughter in her arms and her son by her side. Tanjiro watched his sister and mother with a worried frown. Although he couldn't help but smile slightly when he saw Nezuko cuddle into their mother's chest and close her eyes, just like when she was the age she looked. I really hope everything goes well tonight. If anyone tries to kill Nezuko, Hashira or not, I won't hesitate to fight them. He thought to himself. Kanae frowned and thought, I really hope Nezuko is spared. I've only spent a few days with this demon. No, this child, and I can say for sure that she doesn't mean harm on any humans. Although, that doesn't mean that she will always be able to control herself. She clenched her fists. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A chance for my dream to come true. Please, don't kill her, the flower Hashira prayed. Meanwhile, outside the Ubuyashiki home, the Hashira were talking amongst themselves. I wonder why Kanae isn't here yet. I heard that she got back this morning. Mitsuri Kanroji, the love Hashira wondered out loud. I'm wondering what this meeting is going to be about. I don't think anything happened lately that warrants one. Obanai Iguro, the serpent Hashira said. I heard it meeting has to do with one of her previous missions. Diome Himahima, the stone Hashira replied, staring straight ahead with pale, sightless eyes. Whatever. I just hope she gets here soon. I have training to get to. The wind Hashira, Tsunemi Shinazugawa replied with an annoyed scowl. Are you sure you aren't just worried and want to know if she's alright as soon as possible? Mitsuri asked teasingly. No, shut up Mitsuri, before I cut all your hair off. The white-haired wind breath user growled. But his cheeks were just the slightest bit pinker. What did you say to her? Iguro hissed threateningly, while his pet snake and friend, Kaburamaru, did the same. Muichiro Tokido was staring up at the sky absent-mindedly. Was that an owl or a bat that just flew by? He wondered. Kyojuro Rengoku stood in his flame-decorated Haori like usual. I wonder what the master has called us here to discuss. Whatever it is, I am sure it will be of great importance. He exclaimed with a smile. Tengen Uzui grinned. I hope it'll be something exiting. The dual wielder replied. Suddenly the twin daughters of the master walked out. The master has arrived, they said in sync. All the Hashira instantly knelt before the balcony, as the two girls slid open the doors and took their father's hands to help guide him out. The master stared ahead sightlessly. I am glad that you could all make it to this meeting. Although I hear that one of my children is running a little late, Kagaya Ubuyashiki commented lightly. Yes master, Kanae is running late. I am sure she has a good reason. Kyojuro exclaimed. It is no problem at all Kyojuro. I happen to know that she has a good reason already, the man replied. Kanae arrived a few minutes later. I apologize for my lateness master, but I have brought the people you requested, she said with a bow. The young man turned sightless eyes to the woman and nodded. I see. Thank you for bringing them Kanae, he replied with a smile. Slowly, cautiously, Kai walked into the garden, holding Tanjiro's hand tightly in nervousness and carrying a shrunken Nezuko in her arms. The young demon was wrapped in a blanket to hide her from the other Hashiras for the moment. Nezuko looked up at her mother, blinking. Hello sir, everyone, the woman bowed her head at Kagaya, then the other Hashira. My name is Kai Kamado, and these are my children. My oldest, Tanjiro, she nodded towards the teen, who bowed respectfully, then gestured to the bundle in her arms, and my daughter Nezuko, she introduced them, taking a nervous breath as she looked around. So these were the other Hashira. There was certainly an intimidating aura about them. The sightless man smiled warmly at them. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Kagaya Ubuyashiki. Kamado-san, would you please take your daughter's cloak off? I would like to introduce her to my children properly, he asked gently. Kai trembled nervously. What if they immediately attacked Nezuko the moment they saw her? The leader of the Demon Slayer Corps seemed to sense her hesitance. I promise you, no harm will come to Nezuko-chan while you are here. I will make sure of it. Kagaya's tone of voice didn't change, it was still soft and gentle, but there seemed to be something else in his inflection, and it made all the other Hashira, aside from Kanae, flinch. What could Oyakata-sama mean by that? Tsunemi thought, narrowing his eyes at the bundle in the woman's arms. Kai took a breath, and Tanjiro squeezed her hand in reassurance. His eyes were focused on all the Hashira. If any of them tried anything to hurt his sister, he was ready to headbutt them to hell. He didn't care if they were stronger than him. He wouldn't allow anyone to harm her. He watched as his mother gently placed Nezuko down on her feet, and slowly removed the blanket. He watched as everyone tensed at the sight of his sister, and Tanjiro tensed, ready to defend her if he had to. Even if his efforts didn't amount to much, he would do anything he could. There was a heavy silence, until Tsunemi broke it by exploding from his place kneeling on the ground. The motion was too fast for the two Kamdos to see, and both widened their eyes. The white-haired man appeared right in front of Nezuko, sword poised to cut off her head. Tanjiro began to move, while his mother let out a horrified cry. Before the attack could connect, Kanae was there, blocking the other Hashira's sword with hers. Sanemi's eyes widened, and he leapt back. What the fuck, Kocho? Exclamation mark. What the hell are you doing? He demanded furiously. This seemed to break everyone out of their shock, and the other Hashira began to move. Tanjiro threw himself in front of Nezuko, wrapping his arms around her and clenching his eyes shut, as it seemed to his eyes that a hail of steel was flying towards them. I'm sorry, Mom, everyone, he thought, holding his little sister tight. Kai picked up a branch from the ground and breathed. Her determination to protect her last remaining family burned brightly in her chest, and she moved faster than she ever had in her life, to place herself between her children and the incoming attacks. Hinokami Kagura. Burning bones, summer sun. Kai used the branch to deflect every blow aimed at them. And just in time too. As her body wasn't used to this much strain, the effort of using the breathing technique and fending off the attacks drained her stamina dry. When the final attack landed, she barely managed to block the blow and absorb its momentum, before her branch snapped and she nearly collapsed to the ground, trembling and desperately gasping for breath. Mom! Tanjiro cried as his mother stood in front of them, still holding her arms out to protect them with her own body. I won't allow anyone to harm my children ever again. She yelled, before pain flared in her chest and she stumbled, legs unable to support her anymore. Kanae was there in an instant and caught her student before she could hit the ground. She was speechless. What in the world was that? She eventually gasped. Ryu stared at the woman in shock, before looking down at the ground near her feet. There, cut in half, and smoking at the cut part, was a fairly thick tree branch. His eyes widened. She deflected all of our blows instantly with a stick. He thought. Kai slowly regained her breath, the pain in her chest beginning to fade slightly, but her limbs were still shaking. Even so, she looked up and glared at the Hashira. I don't care if you're the strongest demon slayers there are. I refuse to allow you to harm my children. She cried fiercely, before falling into a coughing fit. I had no idea that the backlash for using the Hinokami Kagura was so intense. And I only used it for a few seconds. She thought. Finally getting over their shock, the other Hashira got ready to attack the demon again, when a calm voice spoke up. Everyone, please calm yourselves, Kagaya began. But master, that's a demon, why is Kocho protecting it? Exclamation mark quote. Obanai cried furiously. She's a traitor, that's why. Tsunemi exclaimed, but his response was slightly delayed. Kanae, why? He thought in despair. I have come to believe, through Kanae's reports, that this demon, Nezuko Kamado, will not attack or attempt to eat humans, Kagaya replied. That is not possible. Demons eat humans, that is the way it is and has always been. Kyojuro exclaimed cheerfully. Yes, as unfortunate as it is. While I would love to believe in Kanae's dream of demons and humans coexisting, it is simply not possible in real life, Kanroji added sadly. Exactly. We should kill it now, before it eats them, Obanai said. My daughter Pant would never eat anyone, Pant much less us. Kay cried, coughing again. If she's family, of course you're gonna be biased. We can't trust anything you say. The serpent Hashira continued. I have been with the Kamados since Nezuko was transformed into a demon. Not once has she attempted to eat or harm her family members or any other humans. In fact, I believe she uses sleep as a way to regain her strength and heal faster. Kanae explained. Huff, Tsunemi snorted, I bet she's just lulling you into a false sense of security. Since it seems you don't understand anything, I will show you myself. The wind Hashira took out his blade and cut his own arm. Tanjiro and his mother stared in surprise, while Nezuko tensed up. Now you'll see. No demon can ever be more than what they are. A man-eating monster, he cried. P.F. Nezuko clenched her fists as she stared at the blood. She started breathing harder, saliva building in her mouth. Well, come on demon, come have a bite. It'll be your last meal before I cut off your head. Tsunemi sneered. Everyone watched silently as the demon girl trembled on the spot. Sweat built on her skin as she really felt her hunger again, like when she first got turned. She gasped for breath through her nose as her saliva dripped down her chin and onto the ground. She was so hungry, so very, very hungry. Just one bite. Please, just one. I want it, I need it, she thought, taking a step forwards. Then an image flashed into her mind. Of a man in black attacking her, and 4 other people. No, those were children. She recognized them. They were suddenly an explosion of voices and images could be heard in her head. Ah! The smaller girl screamed as she was slashed deeply across the chest. Run big sister. A shorter black-haired boy with a green and black scarf cried, before being stabbed through the chest. Henko. Big brother Takeo. The short-haired boy screamed with tears of terror in his eyes before he too was cut down, falling onto his back. Terrified, she watched as the man walked towards the bed that held the small boy. She had to protect him at least. She picked him up, wrapping her arms around him and rushed out the door as fast as she could. Mother. Big brother, help you. Her scream was cut off as a blade of some kind ripped through them, the small boy in her arms not even having time to scream. She fell to the ground, weakly wrapping her arms around the child as though to protect him. As she lost consciousness, she heard a deep voice. You will become a demon, it said. Suddenly agonizing pain, more than even what she had just felt, exploded through her body. But Nezuko didn't even have the strength to scream. The pain built and built, drowning every thought and feeling out until she blacked out. Nezuko's eyes widened and pressure built up in her stomach up her throat. She collapsed to the ground, dry heaving. Nezuko, her mother cried, rushing over to her and quickly removing the bamboo gag. The young demon vomited onto the ground, tears in her eyes. Then she covered her mouth and hid her face in her mother's chest, feeling disgusted at the sight of the blood and how much she wanted to eat the person that it came from. Ooh, pant gasp. Nezuko sobbed and groaned, trembling. Kay held her daughter close and glared at the white-haired man. Is that enough proof for you? Exclamation mark quote. She demanded hotly, or do you intend to continue tormenting my daughter? Exclamation mark quote. Tsunemi glared and bared his teeth, before turning away. What happened? Kagaya asked his children. One of his daughters spoke up. The demon girl looked like she wanted to bite Shinagawa-san. However, she instead vomited onto the ground and is now in tears. The white-haired girl began. And despite her mother removing the bamboo gag so that she could do so, the demon girl has not even attempted to bite her, even with her holding her in her arms, her twin brother continued. You see my children, Nezuko Kamado will not harm humans. I ask that you allow her to live, Kagaya said. Even if she doesn't eat any humans now, who's to say she'll always be able to control her hunger? The man with 2 swords and lots of gems decorating his outfit asked. I agree. She may lose control, and then what? Some poor innocent person will end up being eaten. I say it's still too dangerous, the other tall man who was blind added with a nod. If I may master, the black-haired man with the 2 patterned haori asked. Please, speak freely Gyu, Kagaya stated. My master, Tsukanji Yorokodaki has a special hypnotism technique. It may help Nezuko in controlling herself, he suggested. Ubuyashiki smiled, An excellent idea, Gyu. Would you please write to Mr. Yorokotaki? Ask him to come here as soon as possible. With his help, Nezuko will be no threat to humans. Does this solution satisfy you all? He asked. There was silence among the Hashira. As no one spoke up, the master nodded. Very well then, he turned to face the Kamados and Kanae. You may return to Kane's house now. I apologize for any distress caused, he said with a frown. The flower Hashira bowed. Thank you, master, she said. Kai, who was finally starting to recover, also bowed as much as she could. Thank you pants so much, sir, she replied gratefully. The group of 4 then went to return to the butterfly estate, with Kai planning on taking a long rest when they got there. To be continued.